I'll just go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the discussion and of the film Farmsteaders. My name is Guy from South Hero Land Trust, and this is the last in the series of the Winter Wednesday events. Last week we had our second to last event. It didn't feel like winter. Definitely feels like winter today. So when we were planning these events, we were thinking, will it still feel like winter in April? And we said, yeah, it'll probably still feel like winter. So I'm glad we weren't wrong on that. But thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be having a discussion tonight about the film Farmsteaders, and if you haven't seen the film, that's okay. We actually I think that we'll be able to give some context, and I'll actually put the link to stream it. So if you haven't seen it yet, you'll be able to do that. So this event series is a partnership between South Hero Land Trust and the Worthen Library. We've been able to do these events through also grant funding from the American Libraries Association. They're transforming libraries, transforming community grant. These events are made possible by the members of South Hero Land Trust, the members of the Worthen Library. So thanks everyone for your support. It makes these sort of educational programs possible. And we can offer them for free, which is what we want to do. So if anyone wants to support those efforts, you can check out our website as well as the library's website down there. This is the last in the Winter Wednesday series. But if you all want to keep an eye on what's going on with the Land Trust, we have more events coming this summer. We're working on our plans for what's going to happen. It's going to be different this year still, but we have some upcoming things, like we have Green Up Day for those of you who are in South Hero. Send me an email if you want to get involved. And I will say that I will, in the minute here, I'll put in the chat the link to the other events in this series. So if you missed any of our other winter webinars, we have those all recorded and they're going on YouTube, and they're in a playlist on the South Hero Land Trust YouTube. You can catch all of our previous events, and you can watch those on demand. So yeah, thanks. I just want to thank all of our speakers for being here. Thank you so much to everyone for your time this evening, and thank you all for joining. I'll step back, and Christine, I will let you take it away. Just give me a heads up when you want me to advance the slides.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Christine Porcaro. I work with the Healthy Roots Collaborative. We're a part of the Northwest Regional Planning Commission. We provide business assistance to farm and food businesses in both Franklin and Grand Isle County. Personally, my background is in both dairy farming and value-added products. I'm super excited to be here to talk about Farmsteaders, which showed a really intimate portrait of a family resurrecting their family dairy farm. We're lucky today to have 3 panelists who will get to share their personal experience in farmings and also reflections on the film. We have Steve Robinson of Island Acres Farm, Julie Wolcott of Greenwind Farm, and Alisha Utter of Arbor Farmstead. So we're going to start out the night by having them do an introduction of themselves and their farms, and get some reflection on the film, which will be followed by some questions that we have just to get the conversation going. And then we'll open up to questions that you might have, some reflections you might have on the film, to help enrich in the discussion. So let's start with Steve here.
Great, I was hoping to go last. My name's Steve Robinson, along with my wife Kelly and my son Patrick. We ran a dairy farm up until a year and a half ago. We sold our cows. We still have the farm. We're set up for rotational grazing, and I've been doing that for the last couple of years with other people's animals and our own. We're trying to transition into a for-hire rotational grazing setup. We have our own beef and pigs started, so hopefully we can get into that. So the film itself hit pretty close to home. Early on in the film, it established milking cows, you really can't make any money unless you can control the price of your product, and dairy farmers can't control the price of the product that they're selling. And it was very interesting, but a lot of the film hit really close to home with things that we were struggling with. So some of the neat stuff, and I wish they would have showed more of it, was the closeness of the family. I mean, you could see it. And my oldest son, he's 34 now, and he still lives here on the farm. He was in the barn the day after he was born, and I want people to, the struggles that we went through, I want people to realize I'd go through them again to raise my family the way I did. So hopefully there's something else out there and we still have the farm. It's still up and running. So we'll handle it. The struggles are less now that we're out of the dairy business, but they're still there. So I guess that's my introduction.
Okay, we can go through a few. Do you want to explain a few of these pictures as Guy goes through?
Yeah, that's me. That's my wife, Kelly, and I out behind the barn. You can start to see where we started rotationally grazing the dairy cows, and they took to it really well. I mean, cows know how to eat. We had a lot of help from NRCS and NRCD organizations and the UVM Extension Pasture Group, who really helped us get set up, with the fencing and get set up with the water lines and everything. Water is a big deal. If you don't want your animals traveling a lot, you got to have water set up for them. But they took to it really well. It's probably the hardest transition for rotational grazers is training the farmer. I mean, we were traditional farmers for years, planted 80 acres of corn every year, struggled. Weather is a huge factor in all farms. And, I can remember years more than I can count on my hand where we never got, a great corn crop. That's one of the phrases I always use is it takes a great deal of money to make good corn, and it also takes a great deal of money to make bad corn. So those were some of the struggles that we had. But, that was me with short hair a long time ago. And so the pastures are we still got animals out in the pasture, so which is a great thing to see. That was a picture done by Roy Newton in Grand Isle. He'd helped it during our transition from buying the farm from our parents with the help of the Land Trust, the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, and the Vermont Land Trust. And he did it as a fundraiser. And the labor that went into making this artwork is incredible because it's carved into a tile, and then each color is layered in. And those prints are just fabulous. And I love that print. Yeah, I don't think that's all.
Yeah, let's move on to Julie Wolcott and the Green Wind Farm.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here on this snowy day. So that the Farmsteaders film was true from the first frame to the last, shared a lot of the same struggles as they did. This is a picture of the farm when we moved to it, a year after we moved to it. Pretty barren. And I think as the Nolan family did, it was a lot of transforming the farm into what would work for us and our family. You could move on, Guy. So this is how the farm looks now. We do have a little more grass. We also rotationally grazed. We had a registered Jersey herd and small raw milk dairy business. And we could keep flowing through the slides, would be great. So this was the sugar house when we moved there, in pretty rough shape. The co-op insurance wouldn't insure it because of the state it was in. But keep going, Guy, through. And so now we have a more modern operation, bigger cupola, better woodshed. We always worked with our family, and I think that was really important, the closeness that we had. In fact, I did notice that one of my daughters is on this call. So if Zena, if you want to chime in, you can anytime. So yeah, gathering sap, milking the cows, moving the cows. We all always did that as a family. We had a lot of little projects going, meat birds and pigs, 1 or 2 a year, laying hens, sugaring. And my son Seth runs Pumpkin Village Foods. He cans all of our syrup and distributes it to New York City, where he is today and tonight. We worked with horses when we moved to the farm exclusively, and they were a big part of our ability to work inexpensively. There's our herd of Jerseys a couple of years ago in the fall picture. And now part of our role, my role, was really to nurture this farm along, my kids along. This is a grandson tie with Gerard's bread. And just nurturing the cows and young stock. It was really important to me to keep a healthy herd. It was really a focus to make sure all our animals felt well and were doing the best they could. We also worked a lot with the farm to school community. This is a group of Fairfield students visiting our farm. And then we shared the resources we had. We have a small orchard of 18 or so apple trees of all different varieties, and always welcome people. And now we're sort of in a transition, a big transition. That's Steve and 2 grandsons, Jasper and Ty. So the family is still involved in the farm, and we just did transition the herd to John and Cassie Tiffany. They're milking in our barn now, and we are managing the land, the sugar woods. And I always think it's important to celebrate, to have fun, to bring the community in and share what we have. And that's it for me. Oh no, there's one more. And I guess what I found that it's really important to really pay attention to the details. This little monarch chrysalid illustrated that for me, that we really had to notice that it was there and to protect it. And that's really important to me. Thanks.
Great. Let's move on to Alisha Utter of Arbor Farmstead.
Great. Thanks, Christine. And thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. So my name is Alicia Utter, and I co-steward Arbor Farmstead in Grand Isle with my husband, Kyle. We steward 7 acres, 3 of which are in cropland, diversified crops, everything from perennial fruits to flowers to vegetables more recently. And 4 acres are maintained in cropland. And similar to what Steve mentioned, we work with programs through the NRCS to manage that woodland and also for high tunnel production, which is where this photo was taken. So we've been farming here since 2016. Guy, you're fine to move along. And I did want to share tonight that in addition to my perspective, firsthand farming, I do serve with various boards, and that has helped form my lens and perspective that I bring this evening. That includes the Grand Isle Farm Bureau, the Farmers Market, the Farm Between Board, the Vermont Young Farmers Coalition, the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association, the Vermont Farm Show, the Vermont Working Lands Enterprise Board, and my lab group at UVM, finishing up my PhD in plant and soil science there now, and the Agroecology and Livelihoods Collective there, collaborative there. So a little bit more about our farmstead. So we definitely focus on diversified crops. So in addition to perennials, as I mentioned, doing the cut flowers and then vegetables as well. And our approach is something called veganic agriculture, or vegan organic, or stock free in the United Kingdom is a common term. And so what that means is that we have an ecology-based approach, but we do not incorporate farmed animal inputs. So we don't use manures or blood meal or bone char. And what we do rely on is diversity. So it's not an animal exclusive system. In fact, we have plenty of animals, as you can see with this garter snake, or there's a monarch fluttering through the buckwheat. So we just leverage ecological efficiencies like green manures and cover crops. Here's also a photo of Kyle putting up a bat box in the woodland. So just really encouraging habitat for an array of species. So if there's a theme here to take away, it's diversity is key. And that transcends into our marketing approach. So we've done farmers markets for 6 years, and much of what was in the Farmsteaders film resonated with me emotionally, and the value added piece did as well. So one of our signature items has long been these fruit snow cones that we learned about and took over from our mentor farms at the Farm Between. So we grow these perennial fruits and are adventurous in what types of fruits we grow, and then we can transform them into snow cones and make them very accessible to folks. This past year, we also launched a farm stand that you may have visited on Faywood Road, in addition to having a CSA for 20 weeks this summer. And the project that we're most excited about now is Arbor Farm Market, which you all are the first to know that we will be doing a soft open next week on Arbor Day and opening in the village of South Hero, highlighting the foods grown here in the islands and surrounding communities.
That was awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Before we actually go to the opening question, there was one question in the chat asking where the Island Acres farm is located. So Steve, you can either, I guess, add the address into the chat, or you can say it.
All right, 354 Route 2 South Hero. It's right in the middle of South Hero, right across from my cousin's hardware store, Robinson Hardware Store. It's right on Route 2. 10,000 cars a day go by my house. So
I'll also say too, I'm realizing as we're mentioning all these farms, we also have a guide to food and farms in Franklin and Grand Isle County. So I will post the link to that in the chat. So if anyone wants to check out all your farms, I think you're in there, Julie. If not, we'll have to get you in the farms and food guide. But that's a great way to connect with local farmers and kind of where they're at and what products they have available. And so I'll put that in the chat as well. Actually, I will share my screen again though, so you all can see the questions. Do you have the questions available, Christine, or do you want me to share them? Do you want me to share that screen again?
I do have it, but it might be helpful for the panelists to be able to see them, I'm thinking.
Okay. Cool. I will just throw the the guide to ag in the chat here. So you go down to the bottom of your screen. There's a little button that says chat, and I just put the Northwest Vermont grown in there. So if y'all want to, there's like a map, and you can also search it by type of food. There's also farm profiles in there. So if it's a fun way to connect with local agriculture, and I will get this loaded again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's the guide to ag right there. So if anyone wants to see it, you can see local farms. We actually did a profile on Alicia and Kyle's farm in our latest version. So yeah, let's get the questions back up. So and I will mute myself so I can get out of the way.
Yeah. So we wanted to start this off with just a first few initial questions. Our first one being, a lot of times farms are portrayed in a very romanticized, bucolic way. Did you guys find that the film provided more realism of farm life? And in terms of your own personal experience, what was similar and different when looking at the Nolan's experience of sort of reclaiming the grandfather's dairy farm?
I guess I'll go. The film portrayed it probably too much for me. The struggles and stuff, and I try to forget about the struggle part and more about the happy times, more about the celebrations. But it did portray it, I remember when the cheese place that bought their cheese burned down, and the struggles, we went through that with weather. Can remember planting a corn crop and then watching it rain all year long and not getting any corn, and then wondering out, trying to figure out where were we going to get feed for our animals for the entire winter. So, and I'm sure struggles like that are similar in other businesses, but that one hit pretty close to home and was, so that was pretty close.
Yeah, I feel like when they, the struggle of, it's like not having enough cows to make the product, but then when
Yes.
you have enough cows and have too much product, it was like nothing was necessarily like the solution, because there's always outside factors.
Yeah.
Which one, watching that really like hit me. I was like, oh, I've been there. Julie, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was so much realism and so much that was similar to our experience here. I mean, just coming to a farm that hadn't been farmed in a number of years. And the first 10 years were really hard. Young kids, 4 young kids, and we had 4. And we're learning at the same time, so making lots of mistakes, and a lot of times nothing seems to go right. And then the being torn, I didn't see that so much with them, but being torn between being just focused on the farm and the rest of the life around you. I mean, I think it was really hard to get off the farm and to do much else. Steve and I pretty much had a schedule for probably almost 20 years. And that, I think, allowed us some time off, but our off time was with the kids cooking dinner, washing dishes. But it took, I think, probably 20 years for things to run smoothly and to feel like we had some security here. And yeah, that's all for now, I guess.
Well, I thought it was pretty extraordinary to get to show them going to the Rusted Root concert. Like, I think in terms of like getting to see a farmer go and do something fun, I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
Revolutionary.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's powerful. It's like one of those things that seems really simple, but I thought it was pretty powerful to see that, like, how much effort probably went into them being able to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to see their devotion to each other. I mean, which was really evident from the film, that they worked well together and split the responsibilities fairly well.
Alicia, did you want to add anything?
Sure. Yeah, much of that teamwork definitely resonated with myself and Kyle as well, in the way that we structure things with the divide and conquer approach to working through tasks and chores. One thing that was different but really allowed me to empathize with was the multi-generations and the implications on that land of what failure looked like, or that interpretation was so much more complex when it was family land rather than first generation. And I say that using air quotes because when you look to my great grandparents and great great grandparents, there's a rich history of agriculture there, but we are on land that we are returning back to agricultural production, and we don't have that same family tie here, which comes with other baggage in the sense of we don't have the knowledge and familiarity with this land base. We've looked to community members to try and shed light on it of, should we plant this perennial here? Is it typically wet here, for example, a very shallow example? But I think the family dimension adds all sorts of complexities that we lack on this land base that we are currently stewarding.
In terms of the film, it's not necessarily a familiar format for a documentary with facts and figures. nor does it have narration or much context. Did you find this approach effective? And do you want to take a gander at trying to understand why the filmmakers chose to go that route?
I don't watch a lot of documentaries, but it was very effective. It was fun to see the kids. I mean, the baby, and then him, the littlest, the youngest one talking. God, I've got a 2.5-year-old grandson, and I see him in that little boy all the time. And he lives out back here with his father and his mother, and yeah, so that was a heartwarming part of that, and it did work for me the way the filmmakers did the documentary.
Yeah, I thought it was nice that it spanned a period of time too, whether that was intentional or not, but just to see the growth of the kids over that time. I love seeing the older boy jumping on his motorcycle and going out to get the calf with his dad. Yeah, it maybe was, I don't know if it was intentional on the filmmaker's part or if it's just how it all fell together. But I think it was very effective. And yeah, it was powerful.
I agree with you both. And I think there was strategy in centering on the human experience that my hope is that makes it relatable both to farmers, certainly, of what we've shared of how it we saw ourselves in that, it sounds like, but also that I hope to non-farmers who watched it were able to relate on those levels of intimacy and what we were seeing behind the scenes. So I do think it was a great and effective strategy.
Yeah, I love Julie, you mentioning the passage of time, even within small moments, when Celeste was delivering the cheese and like knowing she started in the morning and like all the stops she made, and then at night coming back and it being like dark, her son was sleeping, and just I think, Alicia, like you were saying, I think that there are people who are farmers very much can relate to that, because like, those days, but then for non-farmers to see like, oh, this is what it takes. This is like the last stage of getting this food to you and like what time that takes. So I thought, such a small part of that film, but to me it was like super powerful. And I'm so glad that they thought to show it. Like, let's show her delivering cheese, which you wouldn't think would make, the cut of the film, but I thought was really important.
And I think a powerful moment for me too was when Celeste was confronting her day and the lack of hours in her day to do the work that needed to be done. I think I have felt that often. And there's no one but yourself that can complete that work. And yeah, it's I don't think the community sees that all the time, that there is a lot of stress in farming.
Do we want to go on to the next questions, Guy? Or actually, I don't know. I mean, we can move on to this question, or I would love to open up to people if they have any questions, and they can place that in the Q&A. Ooh, good question from Becky. What originally attracted you all to farming? Love it. That's a great question.
I guess I'll go. I was born and raised on a dairy farm. My grandparents bought it in 1937. My parents took it over in 1959. I went to ag school at BTC. And then I got to a point in my life, it was 1983, and I'd had enough of farming. I went to California for a year, and it didn't take very long. It was great. I had a great time, but I think my quest to go out to California was to think that people were going to view me different when I got back. And then what I realized, later on in life was, nobody viewed me any different. Just my views had changed. And, I came home, and that time away was really great for me to realize, what I was, what I love to do, what I think I was meant to do. And, so that was my story.
Yeah, and both Steve and I are first generation farmers, though I did grow up in Vermont. And I think what attracted me to farming was actually more homesteading. I didn't feel like I had to compromise, that it was something that I could always agree to and didn't need to apologize for. And it seems to have worked out that way. I never finished college. I just settled and had kids and grew the farm. And I'm certainly happy that I did it. And
like Steve, I also came to Vermont farming by way of California. I grew up in New York's Hudson Valley, which has a rich agricultural community there. And then I went to San Diego and I studied marine science and environmental policy. And I got to know the local fishermen there that really fascinated me with food systems, because I had this shiny new degree in marine science. And then I really got to be entrenched with the community and see the other side of things. So I came to Vermont and I did the farmer training program through UVM. And my mentality there was, I just need to get some dirt under my fingernails so I can do more effective policy work. But once the dirt settled in, I didn't see any going back. And I started to rent land from Ray Allen at Allen Home Farm. And I did some annual vegetable production there. And then my husband and I saved up and we eventually bought this land in Grand Isle. But what attracted me to farming was that I felt like all of these pieces fell in place. There was a lot of satisfaction for me of being able to grow food and serve the community in that way. So that it was a meaningful way to express my values. So I still appreciate that today.
Well, and this is a great follow-up question to that. This is from Jacqueline, and she says, I saw the film speak about generational farming a lot, but do you have any recommendations for someone who would be a first generation farmer? The most I've done is cater to my house plants. It seems daunting, but I'm interested. That's like so perfect. Well done. Yeah. Any advice you would give for someone interested in started farming, or sort of first steps, or maybe things that you wish you would have done from the beginning?
I think being committed to working with a farm or farmers for a period of time, it really takes, I don't know, 2 to 5 years to figure out all the systems and maybe even to experience all that goes on in a farm. But just immersing yourself in a farm and starting there.
I would echo that, Julie, and I did skim over that I was working for other farmers, including Allen Home Farm, and as I mentioned, the Farm Between in Jeffersonville, they're both perennial models, which is what I was interested in, and their mentorship between John and Nancy Hayden and Ray and Pam Allen has been invaluable in shaping our perspective today and the approaches, and being able to have that ongoing dialogue and guidance has just been really important to us. In addition, there's a bunch of organizations that can be of support in helping just find those networks that can help answer those questions that may seem intimidating or overwhelming you. And I'd be happy to share some of those after this panel.
And I think there's access to, if you, depending on what type of farming you want to get into, I think the state of Vermont or the Extension Service has farms that don't have a transition plan, but would like to keep the farm going. So I'm sure Guy could help you out with that, but talk to your local extension agent, or for for positions there, and there may be an easy way to work in, well, it's never easy, but a way to work into, either getting knowledge or, possibly getting a farm.
Yeah, we actually have a farmer handbook that we created for Grand Island, and it could also be pretty applicable to Franklin County as well, but it does have a list of resources for new and beginning farmers. And there's some great programs out there through the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, the Intervale Center. They have really great programs for helping new farmers get started, and people who are looking to get into that field. There's a lot of great resources. I think that Vermont is one of the best states for incubating people to really get their own farm started. So I will, I'll just mention this too, and just in general, we'll send a follow-up email to everyone, and I'll put some of those resources in there for how to get small farms started, and other things we mentioned during this event as well.
Yeah, I think the film itself really showed, I mean, it made it seem very isolating, like farm life, and I think sometimes it can be, but I do think in terms of Vermont itself is a very connected community of farmers and a lot of support out there. So I feel like never hesitating to reach out to people to get, education, information. If they don't have it, they'll point you in the right direction. There is a question in the chat that I want to ask. After having seen Farmsteaders, how did it leave you all? Optimistic, pessimistic, disenfranchised, uplifted? Yeah, at the end of it, sort of, I mean, I guess you could say like the emotions during and after, how did it leave you?
It left me, it's sad, but it also, I mean, to watch the kids as they were growing up, I could see my own kids and their growth. And so I could see that, maybe financially, I don't know how you quantify success. I looked at that family and I saw success. I saw Edgar, the oldest, even the youngest there, that little boy was fantastic. They were successful parents, and monetarily, I don't know if they were successful farmers, but I mean, they looked to me, they looked like, like a great family. So, and that would, in my book, that would be a success there.
Yeah, I think the growth of the kids was really the most positive thing that I saw, and how they benefited from being on the land. I guess what maybe concerned me more, or maybe was that I didn't see a lot of change in the farm itself in those five years. Like they didn't really put a lot back into the farm or the farmland or the farm buildings. And I'm not sure why that was. And I would have thought after a 5-year period, there would have been, some recognizable changes to the farmstead itself. And I was disappointed that they didn't rotationally graze, that they didn't improve their pastures, improve their land by using it in a different way.
Alicia, any reflections on that?
Sure. Yeah. I think my response is not one of the A, B, C, or D's here, but it was validating the sense of just, we need better supports for small farms. And it to me was so much of seeing ourselves in it, even though they have a different model of farm. And this happens again and again. And I think it's really easily as a farmer to feel isolated or even ashamed of this is what failure looks like or feels like. And then in organizations like the Vermont Young Farmers Coalition, when we get together for a beer and hearing that, oh my gosh, and being able to share those stories, I think there's all of these different levels here that we can discuss this at the policy level, but also at the interpersonal, and what that looks like having a community of farmers and further unifying to just on a social level to be able to emotionally support one another. But I guess I was feeling empathy at the end of that, and also validation for what I already thought needed to happen surrounding small farms.
That's a really great point, Alicia. I think, especially if a farmer is feeling isolated and you start to see like someone else's product in a bunch of stores, you're like assuming they're successful, you're assuming they're having a good time, and that like maybe you're failing, and that like having that network where you are like talking to each other and being like, oh, we're all struggling with this or with this. I mean, it doesn't solve everything, but I think, yeah, having that understanding of like success and failure and where everybody's struggling on that spectrum. We have a question from Lexi. She said, the film is such a beautiful glimpse into dairy and an industry so uncontrollable. Do you all think dairies will continue to struggle without consolidation or diversification? You saw them adapt by creating cheese, and that was where the income primarily began. Do you think further diversification would have lessened the impact of losing their primary customer? So I guess in terms of, talking about dairy, is diversification is that, solving problems, I guess seeing what they did and whether that was enough?
I think dairy farms were diversified, 75, 100 years ago, and we became specialized. And that was probably part of our downfall. And unless you are diversified, but the corporate structure for buying milk and selling it that you have no control over, absolutely none. That's not a great model. And I have no idea where that's headed unless you can sell and market and make your own niche in the dairy industry. I really, diversification is the only way to, and they found it in cheese, whether they could have gone and done different cheeses and stuff, so but the dairy industry now is, it's just going to get bigger and more corporate. So I'm kind of a little bit pessimistic about that because I kind of lived through it. So.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with Steve too. There's the only way dairy farms are going to grow is if they're small and they can direct market their product and have control over the price. We were conventional for 30 years, I think, and then transitioned to organic the last 5 years that we were milking. And did find the organic price much better and a lot more sustainable. And then with a small raw milk business where we can directly sell to the customer, it makes a difference. It wasn't a huge addition to our income, but it was cash in our pocket right away. And dairy farms are just consolidating out of control.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of, finding solution for dairies, thinking of diversification, but also, a value added option, like they did with cheese, it's understanding that, all of a sudden you're running two businesses, you're running a dairy and you're running a creamery, and it's, it's no easy feat. So, it might help save it, but it's not an easy solution. Sorry.
And if you are successful in diversifying, you end up paying for the dairy industry. So the profits that you make in one area, you end up helping pay. That we did this for years, where we were successful in either a sweet corn crop or something else, but it just paid for the loss that we had milking cows, which kind of defeated the whole diversification process. So.
Well, Alicia, I was wondering if you have perspective, especially in terms of, the diversified product that you offer, but I guess also in terms of the outlets and the market that you're starting, that seems to be very much the foundation of your business model.
Yes, we have been referred to as being small and scrappy and being able to evolve very quickly. So that speaks to crop. We regularly have crop failures. We had pre-sold our elderberry crop for 2020 and 21, and we had crop failure there, but we were able to pivot because we have other crops in the ground, so able to sell those to other markets, and so still being able to pay the bills. So diversification in crops has been critical for us, but also markets. So when COVID settled in, we were not getting our same restaurant orders from chefs because we sell fruit and other products to chefs. So then we were able to quickly pivot and do the farm stand, thanks to the companies coming out and supporting that this summer, but also things like the CSA and being able to evolve very rapidly. And that's just been, I think often it's framed as a negativity around being small. And to us, it's really been a benefit to be able to respond to market demand and respond to other factors very quickly.
We have another question here from Rich, and he wanted to know, what do you know about dairy pricing in Canada? Does anyone have any sort of information on that or expertise in that? Oh, Steve, I think you're muted. Oh no.
Sorry, Steve, I muted you. So you might have to unmute yourself there. Sorry about that.
There you go.
Okay, how's that?
Good.
Blame me, sorry.
All right, okay. You try to do that when we talk at home there too, so. It's on a quota system. The United States has been reluctant to do that because the quota system in Canada has created a value in the quota system itself. So, I think that's where we could head, but it's a quota system in Canada. We've been trying to find a model that would fit here in the United States, but the powers that be, I think they like the corporate structure that they have.
Do we have any other questions? I don't see any in the chat or the Q&A, but I guess I also would like to open the floor to the panelists if you have any other final reflections or anything else that I guess wasn't said that you want to say, or any thoughts on the film that you sort of would want to end on.
Okay, I guess I'll jump in again. Julia talked about making sure to make time to celebrate stuff, and we have a really close knit community here in South Hero, and it was 2002 when my parents had decided to sell the farm, and with the help of the land trust, and it took a long time, but if it wasn't for the community, Vermont Housing Conservation Board, Vermont Land Trust, there wouldn't be an open farm here in South Hero. We have lakefront, we have 182 acres here, and most of it's conserved, and it's right in the middle of town. And if it wasn't for the community and the friends in the community and the South Hero Land Trust, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did. I could have gone to New York and bought a farm for a third of the price of what farms are worth here in Vermont, but I didn't. This is where I grew up. This is where I farm. This is the land I know. This is the land that I picked the rocks on, built the fence on. So, if it wasn't for the community, that's my struggle. That's my responsibility. As a landowner, a steward of the land, and we all need to take responsibility. And if there's anybody out there watching, get to know your farmer. You all have a doctor. You all have a dentist. I mean, you all have, you can get to know your farmer, get to, patronize, your farm stands, your CSAs. If you want to help, that's what you need to do. And instead of writing on Front Porch Forum or some other social media, when something doesn't look right or doesn't smell right, go to a farmer and ask, as opposed to, immediately going negative. There may be a reason, it may be good, maybe it isn't, but go find out who your farmers are.
And I guess I would just like to put in a plug for farmers and the impact they have on their communities. And that I know in Fairfield we're seeing with a lot of dairies being sold out the last 5 or 10 years, the municipal dynamics have really changed a lot. The ability for families to participate in community activities has changed. The volunteer pool has changed. And I just, yeah, if you can support farmers and keep them in your communities by buying their products, please do. I mean, they're a real asset to our rural communities.
Yeah, based off of what Julie and Steve said, what the success of a farm, I think really the impact is so far reaching on the community, and that spans across measure in terms of ecologically keeping that land under stewardship, but also on a social and the history that it maintains. So I think it's important to think longitudinally, engage in those conversations that Steve was mentioning of, I think if we had a lot more communication, even if it's something that we don't agree with, it's so important. So my call to farmers is definitely to unify. And I think there's often a desire to pit farmers against one another. And I think more than ever that we do need to come together and advocate for a future where there is land stewardship and working lands in Vermont. And then also what Julie was saying in terms of supporting local farmers in the community. Super important, get to know them. And I think there's a lot of potential in terms of a collective future. And this was something that was on my mind prior to this talk, but what does future land stewardship look like? How can we connect that with larger goals of food sovereignty and thinking not only on the localized scale, but what does food sovereignty look like globally? And these are all questions that are really interesting and go back to having that conversation and the hard conversations too about what do we collectively envision as a sustainable future for Vermont?
Yeah, that is, well, you guys are the greatest. And I also wanted to just also bring to light with Healthy Roots does a lot of work with farmers and even before the pandemic, but I want to say, you know, over this past year, farmers in Franklin and Grand Isle County have been providing food to a lot of charitable organizations, our charitable partners in Franklin and Grand Isle County, and a lot of people were fed because of the work that they do. So like forever grateful, and the work that they did was like instrumental in being able to get food to people throughout this really difficult past year. So yeah, definitely support your local farmers because they are feeding everyone in the community. Guy, did you want to say anything to wrap this up?
Yeah, that was incredible. I want to thank you all so much for sharing your stories and like your family's history, your personal, you know, what you bring to this has been so enriching, I think, for me personally, and I really appreciate you all sharing so much. And yeah, thanks everyone also for your really, really great questions. That was incredible. And I'm really looking forward to continuing this conversation. I just put in the chat a feedback form. This is the last event in our series this year. Thank you everyone for coming out. We've had a really great series on a variety of topics, and it's been really incredible, and we're going to do it again next year. So if you have any topics that you'd like to see represented, if there's any stories that you feel like are not being told, if you feel like something you really want to learn about, you know, that's going on, like, let us know. So I put that feedback form there in the chat, and you can fill it out. And I'll also put the link to the playlist for this series. So you can watch all of, we'll post this event in the playlist, the recording, as well as all the previous events if folks aren't familiar, we did an event with folks from the Abenaki community with Chief Don Stevens and some other folks. We did an event with Migrant Justice. We've also spoken with hunters from the islands and elsewhere to talk about ecology and hunting. We had an event on water quality. So definitely check those out if you haven't had a chance yet. Yeah, thank you, Christine, for like moderating. Thank you to like Healthy Roots for being involved. Thank you, Steve, Julie, and Alicia for being here. Thank you all for joining. There's a few other questions in the chat. I think it's about 8 o'clock. So I think we'll wrap, but I'll save those questions, and we'll give folks a chance to follow up in the feedback or in the follow-up email, which I'll send to everyone who joins today. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Enjoy the rest of
Have
your
a good night.
snowy evening out there.
Being here, y'all.